Therefore, Makwa Ediba a FunnTV GH so and FunnTV GH. Now FunnTV GH brand yaje brand yaje penny ya my average of 4. So the umbebo edi era a headlines and the trending issues just a abo edi era a highway and so. Now some dey be or highway and so now some ebe boy ras on busia. Let's just subscribe to FunnTV GH or by your subscription now I share. Now for so inside to me account mo your mate the air cost so e my Ghana e ya manyo same. Now in some ben aba highway and so. And some about highway so if we the NDC Makachi now if we the general secretary for the NDC now some of the 2 day and some election I to the general election I December 7th no some of the 2 judges said omo NDC amanyoko no omo nje the parliament and the EC omo nje omo ndi na say eba say one person mu wiem na say MPP for no etimi efa power there omo ebe crash omo polling station ho ansa na say omo adwem boni bia omo planning e dey afa election no so betimi akoso message say ebe gibre na eti nsema the general secretary for the NDC e dey told but that's it
has a greater responsibility because they are in charge of the machinery of state. So if they decide to want to abuse it, that often is what brings about the difficulty. So we are hoping that the police will not just be making assurances, but on D-Day they clearly will be up to their task. In fact, today we'll be having a meeting with them. Right from here, we'll be having a meeting with them, and we want to hear from them clear assurances that they are not just expressing it verbally, but they truly mean to be able to do it well.
The police has that mandate, so we don't have to be hopeful. The police has to work and deliver law and order on the day, as is their job. The EC has its mandate as well, which is to deliver fair, credible elections. But your relationship with the EC has been very turbulent historically, and in recent times even more so, because it appears that according to the NDC, when they identify what they call discrepancies, those are not acted upon. A few days to election, how confident are you of the structure the EC has put in place, perhaps in response to some of the concerns that you have raised in the past?
Yeah, when you say historically, maybe you mean much more of a recent history, because our issues, we've not really had these issues at all with the Electoral Commission until the coming of Jean Mensa and her group. And her group, clearly, as soon as they came, they made it very obvious that their number one consideration was doing the bidding of the people who put them in power, in position, rather than doing the bidding of the people of Ghana. So every step of the way, it's been almost like she, together with her team, and then with the NPP, coming against the NDC. They set aside things that have been done in this country from 1994 in terms of the setting up of the IPAC, which was an institution that was put in place, which often was a means by which especially the opposition political parties are able to bring their issues, and then consensus is arrived in order to allow for a level playing field. Unfortunately, when Jean Mensa came, she totally jettisoned that whole practice, set up a system that became much more of a, when you come to the Electoral Commission, IPAC, it's much more of a, either you are listening to the dictates and the directives of the Electoral Commission, or if there is anything of contention, immediately she say, let's vote. And of course, they always ensure that they have all these very mushrooming political parties that they basically had orchestrated to be with the NPP. So it became a situation that became untenable for the NDC, and we were forced, therefore, to withdraw from the from the IPAC for a number of years. Eventually, as a result of conversations, we've gone back. I would say, since going back, it's been relatively better compared to what it was. But we still have to appreciate that the Electoral Commission must be able to do far more in order to be able to convince. If you've had a different, recent issues that we've had, for example, I can't remember the last time we were a week to an election and we were talking about ballot shortages. a week to an election, we're talking about postponement of a special voting in 2 critical regions of the country, in Eastern region and Western region. I mean, that's a level of incompetence that we've seen. I don't remember that ever happened during the time of Afarijan, never happened during the time of Charlotte. So we're talking about electoral commission that clearly has a lot of questions to answer. So we are right to continue being very suspicious. We are right to continue keeping our eyes wide open, because the history of Jean Mensa and her team does not give us any confidence.
Some would argue that every single matter that you've raised with the EC, especially from the time of the opening of the voter register for new people to be admitted onto the roll, and the discrepancies that you noticed when a copy of the register was given to you, every single item has been acted upon. So on what basis do you form then this continued distrust? Because it appears that they do listen and something is done. Are you saying it's still not enough?
Yeah, we're talking about what you call a consistent pattern of incompetence. I just explained to you. I mean, things that we've never heard of before. So we're dealing fundamentally with a group that has not shown competence, and 2, a group that, at least in the previous election, and also part of the preparation towards this election, for example, I can cite you an example. For example, when we went for the balloting for the position on the ballot paper, we clearly believe that EC again demonstrated lack of courage, lack of capacity to be decisive by allowing NPP to be flagrant and abuse that very process. Now, that's not an EC that wants to ensure that things are done above board. So as far as we are concerned, EC is guilty until they prove themselves innocent.
But the laws of the land say you are innocent until you are proven guilty.
But not in the case of the EC, because the EC has historically shown that they cannot be trusted. So the people of Ghana must continue to distrust them until they can do what is right on election.
What's your fear with the Volta situation, considering one would think that if a mistake has been spotted early on and an attempt has been made to remedy the situation, that would give you cause for calm rather than agitation? What's your fear here?
The incompetence just shows that on election day we may have exactly same things recurring. If 1 week to an election you cannot get your job done well, I don't remember the last time 2 regions have had postponement of their special voting just because of the sheer incompetence they're being demonstrated by the Electoral Commission. So clearly, it is not a group that I will be able to sleep and trust that a good job is going to be done.
So if on election day, the order for the voter situation to be resolved through a reprinting of the ballot had not happened, then potentially we could have witnessed a situation where people went to the polling station and there was no papers for them to vote with. So if an attempt has been made to make up for that shortfall, doesn't it please you, satisfy you, considering the
ideal
NDC's
situation will be you doing your job well, that we didn't even have to have that situation. It tells you that you are sleeping on the job. And I'm not too sure exactly on election day what other issues are going to be occurring. So I'm talking about an issue that has an EC that has systematically shown that it's not capable of doing the job. First time in our history we had an EC that could not produce one result that could be what you call verified by the people of Ghana. Change result more than what, twice, 3 different times. I mean, it's terrible.
You point to these irregularities, and one asks, so what's the NDC's plan to make sure that, like we've been told persistently at the election petition, elections are won at the polling station, and no court can call an election in favor of one party or the other. So what kind of rigid systems are you putting in place as a party with your agents, with your polling station observers, to make sure that the person who votes for NDC has that guarantee that that vote is protected and cannot be, for lack of a better expression, stolen or rigged?
That is what it is we intend to do. That's why we said right from the word go that we are not going to allow our fate to be in the hand of any Supreme Court this time around. Neither are we going to simply wait and allow for the EC's shenanigan to be our issue. So we want to ensure that every step of the way we monitor, we police, we've taken time to have extensive preparation with our agents. We want to make sure that everyone is up to their task on the day. We want to serve notice to any of the Electoral Commission officials in any police station that may want to play any game. We are going to be super vigilant and expose every single one of them and serving clear notice. Just like Azuma did when he went to his second match against Finnish in Australia. We are taking our judges into it, and our judges means our capacity to do what we've got to do legitimately and win the election.
How concerned are you about developments, especially from special voting? I'm sure you've heard some people think we are voting on one day and going into another day with another set of polls. Yesterday, we chanced upon a gentleman who assumed that we were voting for presidential yesterday and the parliamentary on. How are you countering fake news and disinformation in this election?
Unfortunately, with the emergence of social media and the desperation, especially on the part of our opponents, we have to literally on a real-time basis be dealing with every single day. I mean, as General Secretary, I find myself in that problem every moment. No day passes without a letter being put out there, of course, coming from our opponent with my signature on it, completely misinforming the public. So it's something we've had to let our people know, that don't believe anything until you get a complete confirmation coming from the highest part of the party. So is the unfortunate reality of the world that
someone like you media message over your pro like na wash also insert to me. I can also subscribe as well over your pro subscription na Ejumano ayeboko de akọ de ama afanuni na so they be abenya daily updates and so now 18 send me akamia ko yes the secretary of the NDC M0re to J or the era the former easy boss owura afarijan e de compare Mensa na the comparison my own say say owura afarijan timi bo adwuma ate say ohwema mentimo ho ase bia ntimi ankoso na kamia ko yes Mensa de na ni je sa mentimo ho ase ate so be bibia ma MPP amanyoko no etimi afa tumi message say beto aso na 18 sanse me dase
we are facing in today.
You talk about election desperation, but every single candidate on the ballot is hoping that it will get the attention of the voters. What do you think works for you if you don't want to call the situation in the NDC election desperation that should make voters decide to go your way and not any other?
Let me give you a typical example of election desperation. That's what you saw happening also West Wuogon yesterday. There are two main candidates there. John Dumelo of the NDC and Lydia of the NPP. That desperation by Lydia is exactly what you call election desperation, where a whole member of parliament, a parliamentary candidate, becomes so desperate that she flagrantly abuses the process. She tries to literally bribe what you call the people who are in the queue to go and vote.
Her party people could interpret that as caring.
No,
for
caring
the people
for what?
in
There
the
are
queue.
so many
That's
people.
not fair.
There are so many people in also West Wuogon who have not had a meal a day. A lot of young people, a lot of people who don't have jobs. She doesn't care about them. She cares about the people in the vote. That is nothing but desperation at its highest level. And that's a shameful practice coming from a member of parliament. Totally shameful.
Jobs are what the youth of Ghana appear to find critical in the lead up to this election. And the NDC has talked about a number of ways in which it's going to create jobs. How do you ensure that these are going to happen? How do you assure the young people of Ghana that this can be done?
Generally, when you talk about jobs, you're talking about the economy. So that is the number one concern. The economy has to be better managed. Because you know what? 2016, when NDC was leaving office, we had an unemployment situation in the country at about 8%. Today we are talking about that doubling within a space of 8 years. It tells you that something has happened in the economy that has shrunk the opportunities for people to be able to, because don't forget, we're talking about an economy that largely is about 80 to 85% informal. That's generally what the economies in Africa largely are. The very formal economy is mostly around maybe about 15%. So it's largely an informal economy. An informal economy are largely a function of what is happening to the overall economy, whether people are able to have the kind of stability in order for them to be able to invest, whether people have stability in terms of inflation that is not causing their incomes to shrink and their capital to totally wear off. People having issues, for example, with the currency, because the currency can totally throw up to your businesses. Because a lot of our people as well depend on what you call the importation of various products into the country, and then on the back of that, they are able to do their economic activity. So if you do not have a management of an economy that creates stability and creates hope for people to be able to do an investment to grow, naturally jobs are going to be a problem. So that's the number one thing you need to resolve. You need to resolve that. Two, you also need to have a system in place that, because don't forget, government is the largest spender in any economy, especially in our part of the world. So there must be a deliberate policy on the part of government to want to use its capacity to spending to incentivize people who are in production. And young people are in production.
Considering that we were upwards of 50% in our rate of inflation just about a year or so ago, and where we are now with that coming down to 20, and Bank of Ghana is giving us some steady rates, doesn't it suggest that something appears to have been done and perhaps that's working? You don't think so?
50% inflation, I don't remember the last time we had that. That tells you the extent of catastrophe that this country has seen. And
we've come somewhat of a way since the 50s.
Are we supposed to be applauding a government that actually takes inflation upward of 50 and then tells us that we've been able to bring it down? Is it supposed to be something we applaud? That's absolute disaster, especially when you're talking about a government that's had the highest resource in the history of our country. I don't remember any government in our history that have had access to the kind of resources that this current government has had. We're talking a government that almost, if you put totality of all the resources, the loans that they've had, the taxes that they've had, the oil resources that they've had, you put it all together, we're talking about almost 1 trillion in 8 years. The totality of what NDC had in 8 years was about 248 billion. You're talking about that kind of magnitude, and you have plunged this economy into the kind of disaster. The young people today are literally trooping out of our country because they've lost hope. I mean, that's a complete disaster.
So if you really are clearly
not able to give hope to young people. The economy must be stabilized. You must have people who know how to manage the economy, how to stabilize the economy, and also be able to implement policies that will be able to allow young people to be in charge of their own destiny.
You cannot implement policies the extent to which the NDC is proposing without some heavy financial muscle behind you. And if you claim that the country is that broke, where are we going to get the money to do all this?
First and foremost, you need to appreciate that a lot of the problems that we've had today are largely self-inflicted. Largely self-inflicted because we're talking about a group that, as I mentioned, in an election year 2020, had access to resources that NDC would have literally dreamed to have. COVID in 2020 was actually a blessing to this government and not a curse. That period of COVID alone, the resources that they got within just the last 6 months of the year was in the region of about 30 billion cedis. And NDC in 8 years, the totality of money we borrowed was about, we came in when it was about 10 billion. By the time we were leaving, it was 120. So in all, 110 billion in 8 years. They were having 30 billion for just 6 months and still managed to leave what you call a deficit of over 15%. So it tells you that it was largely self-inflicted. They used their money to be able to do their electioneering, threw it around like confetti, gave it to their people, sharing. So that is what, so it's a self-inflicted problem. How do we resolve it? By ensuring that you do not place politics ahead of the economy. And that's what we did when we were in office. We could have done exactly what they did, throw money around for the purposes of election, but we did not do that.
Before government monies are spent, a certain process, some of which includes parliamentary approvals, are done. And so NDC MPs have been a part of approving projects to execution of certain projects. So if we are to hold anyone to account for oversight, is it fair to put that responsibility on the NDC and then say that if due diligence has not been done, then perhaps the NDC has not entirely done that for the people of Ghana.
No, that's absolutely ridiculous that you have a government that deliberately decides to destroy the economy by throwing money that is meant to be used for project, decided to give it to its people to spend around for electioneering purposes, and you say that, well, the opposition should be responsible? In what world do we do a thing like that? It's almost as if you are taking responsibility away from those who are committing the crime and say that, oh, you are supposed to check the crime. No. Your job as the one in charge who swore on the Constitution of Ghana to defend what is right for Ghana, you have to do what is right.
If someone has knowledge of a crime being committed or of a crime having been committed and does not communicate that knowledge to the relevant authorities, the law says it's aiding and abetting.
So you think, for example, that NDC is supposed to know that MPP has given money to his parliamentary candidate to be sharing in the rural areas?
I suggest that if evidence of this is handed over to the authorities like the OSP...
I'm just telling you that such a thing was done, which was criminal on the part of the MPP, self-inflicted. So there's no excuse, no attempt to try to let somebody take that blame. Nana Akufo-Addo and Bawumia absolutely destroyed the economy, presided over the catastrophe, and NDC should not in any way be placed in any way to mitigate the disaster that the MPP has represented.
At some point, the people of Ghana felt unhappy and dissatisfied with former President John Mahama and decided to vote for an NPP administration. Now we are at a point that the NDC says, you know what, we perhaps may have learned from past mistakes and we want another opportunity. And the NPP has been flying adverts, and they ask in some of those adverts to do what? What does the NDC want to do in a new administration?
It sounds very much like what happened in America, where at a point the people of America felt that, you know what, Donald Trump, we've seen what you've done for 4 years. Let's give an opportunity for another regime. And that regime has come, and America saw a massive collapse of the economy, massive problems with inflation, massive suffering. And at the end of the day, you know what? We want Trump back. Exactly what it is that's going to happen in Ghana.
So John Mahama
if you look at what
Ghana's Donald Trump.
If you look at what Mahama 4 years accomplished in our country, MPP in 8 years cannot match it in any level. In terms of the development that has been provided, in terms of the management of the economy, in terms of the level of decency of the leadership, in terms of the genuine humility that he showed. I mean, that in terms of what you call capacity to show responsibility, as opposed to a regime that has not just collapsed the economy, but has the arrogance to continue pretending that they are not in charge of the problem. That they try to blame different people. How do you tell the people of Ghana today that the reason why the economy has suffered is because of COVID and because of Russia and Ukraine, when the people of Ghana know that you have presided over that problem? It tells you that there's no desire to show accountability at all. So the people of Ghana clearly want to make sure that they do what is needed in order for there to be proper accountability. This regime not just has to lose power, but is the kind of clear things, wrong thing that they have done must be punished, and punished in a way that all subsequent regimes that will take over will know that you don't take over a country and preside over the levels of suffering and the levels of corruption that we have seen in this country over the last 8 years.
But as it Sergeant Bernard Penny Edema a FunnTV GH say M0re na a political highway no more in some and Funko about one and also who let's say the Ecoso or my Ghana a Manusimu. Now so subscribe to a FunnTV GH. I message over drop your subscription. Now was share no for also inside to me account. That's all I hear is what or like now so once in Caribbean I say in come to TV or the best share the comment section ho na FunnTV GH man say you be kind na ya ba ho a M0re. But that's it, so Jibrema a FunnTV GH.